The average cost for a wedding this year is $33,000. Is it worth it or is it not? As Rachelle and I reflect on our wedding day, stick around to see what we regret paying for and how you can save money when you say, I do.
1, 2, 3, 4.
This is StewardShift, a show that gives you the tools you need to get the most of your best resources. Your money, your mind, your body, your time.
Welcome to the StewardShift Show. I'm so glad you're here because we have a very beautiful face on camera, and it's not mine. This is Rachelle. This is my wife, y'all. We've been married for 15 years. Rachelle, welcome to the StewardShift Show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We're glad that you're here also. Look, again, we've been married for almost 15 years now.
Yeah.
And every now and again, we have these moments where we reflect on our wedding day. And it was a beautiful day, nice day, sunny August day in Newark, New Jersey. That's where we got married. I feel like it felt so young back then. Like life.
We were young.
We were very young.
We were very young. We were 22 when we got married.
22 years old. And I'm thinking like, dude, if one of my kids is 22, would I let them, or not let, because they're grown at that point, but would I be like, yeah, just going to get married and whatnot? Like, that's pretty young. What do you think? Before we like actually get to the subject matter, like, that's pretty young.
We were young, but I feel as though kids nowadays, they're not as mature sooner as we were very much. Although we were young, we were also mature. And we had a plan for life and we knew where we were going. And so, yeah, our kids, I don't know. I don't know about all of that.
Yeah, these kids that grow up nowadays, it's different. It's very different. If you don't have kids, you'll soon find out, I suppose. But yeah, we got married young. And if you know anything about getting married young, you don't have a whole lot of money at all. And so we oftentimes reflect on the costs for the wedding and where we could have cut costs, or maybe where we could have or should have increased some costs. And we're here to just kind of share that with you, with the audience. We actually, Rachelle, if you remember correctly, we found out the hard way that just about all vendors have certain prices for weddings. Right. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that.
If you ever like order flowers from a florist, here's a regular cost. But if they find out that flowers are for a wedding, here's the other set of costs, like up here. Same thing for limos, same thing for venues. Costs always increase when they find out that it's for a wedding. And we just didn't have the sense or the life experience to really know that. But we found out the hard way that that's what life is all about. So there are some things that we did save on. We didn't make like completely terrible decisions on our wedding day. Some of the things that we did save on. Do you remember any of those things that we saved?
I feel as though my wedding dress wasn't as expensive as it could have been. We literally went to New York, went to a hole-in-the-wall shop, and chose a dress. My sisters were there. My dad was there. And it's tradition in our family for my dad to make the final approval of the wedding dress. So he was there and I was literally changing wedding dresses inside this small little closet. And at the end of the day, I believe the dress was like about $700 or so, which is like unheard of for like a wedding dress. And I feel as though it was a really beautiful dress.
It was.
For such a price. So definitely the wedding dress, I feel as though we had for like a bargain. We were able to save it. I feel as though I think it was a bargain, but Troy, not so much. No, wedding dresses run like, $2,000, $3,000. And that's like, I feel as though the lower end of wedding dresses. They can go up to like $5,000. Wedding dresses are very expensive based on like how extravagant you want the dress to be. But it was a simple, beautiful dress.
Okay.
And I feel as though it was a bargain.
All right. So since you think that, I'm going to think that also. All right.
Okay.
So, all right. So that's one thing that we saved on. We got a so-called discount dress, which was very beautiful. I 100% agree. You look good on the wedding day.
Thank you.
Remember
you looked handsome yourself.
Thank you so much.
Very
You
handsome.
remember I cried just a little bit.
Yes.
When your dad walked you down the aisle.
And I was laughing. I'm
You
like,
were.
Why is he crying? I'm like, oh gosh.
Oh. All right. So another thing that we did save on for our wedding, and by the way, we're going to give you a list of things that are usually high cost for weddings where you can probably save and get some sort of bargain. So just kind of stay tuned. But the next thing that we did save on was catering, right? We didn't pay a traditional caterer. We actually enlisted some family.
Yes, mostly my family.
Your cousin, who is just like
wonderful,
phenomenal cook.
Wonderful cook. And the food was good. And it was a lot of food. It wasn't like we were running out of food.
Well, anything your family does is going to be more than enough, like over the top in terms of food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that I didn't have that like really surpassed my expectations. That's honestly, that's what I expected. I knew that it was going to be good and it was going to be more than enough for the number of guests that we had.
And another thing we did too is that we had like the kids from my church, my home church, to serve the food. They had their own little uniforms on and they like did such a good job. They did the cocktail hour, they served the hors d'oeuvres, and they also like served the food, which was really good.
Right. Yeah, so we didn't have to pay any wait staff for that, which worked out. I forgot about that. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. All right. So another thing that we did save on as well was the church venue. And I know that many times, especially if you're a church member, look, I get it. I was a pastor for 13 years or so. So I have never, ever charged a church member, nor have I seen a church member be charged to use their own church or to have their own pastor facilitate the ceremony. But we were not using a home church for either of us. And so it did cost us to use the church. So we had actually asked to use a church that family had used. I think two of your sisters had gotten married there previously. And I don't think, was there a cost for them to use it, or was it completely free to them? I'm trying to remember what the story was. It wasn't
completely free, but it was heavily discounted.
Right.
But that wasn't really the case for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I remember specifically that it was, I want to say it was like $1,000 or something like that to
I really don't remember. I don't remember.
I don't know why I had that thought in my mind, and I could be completely tripping. But yeah, it cost a good amount for us to rent that original facility that we really, really wanted. And because it cost such a high amount, we had to go further up the road in order to rent something else. And honestly, I don't have, and even though that was further from where we wanted and also further from the reception venue, I feel like that sanctuary that we used was actually
perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect in terms of size and in terms of beauty. Very, very, very nice sanctuary. So we paid less money and got a better sanctuary. The only trade-off was that we had to go a bit further up the road in order to get that done. But that was one decision that I feel like we made a very good decision in the moment to, kind of lower the cost of the wedding.
Look at 22-year-olds just making decisions.
Yeah, that wasn't bad at all.
No.
It wasn't bad.
No.
All right. So one last thing that we did save on for our ceremony, and really not just the ceremony, but something I wear to this day, were our wedding rings. I only paid $99 for this ring, and I had paid $99 for yours as well. So it wasn't really a high extravagant cost. Right. In fact, your original engagement ring, I didn't spend a whole lot on that either because I was 21 when I bought that. So I didn't have a lot of money, literally a college student that didn't have much to his name. And so that was something that I bought that I could, in fact, afford. Now, you do have something that is better, nicer, I suppose, on your finger. But I can't imagine buying what you have now back then. And I'm glad that we made a reasonable decision back then for wedding rings. So one thing that we did splurge on, and I actually don't remember if like we really sat there and had a conversation about this, but I did not rent a tux for our wedding. My groomsmen did have a tux, but I did not rent mine. Do you have any feelings about that now? Like 15 years later, do you think I should have just spent less money? Because it was something that I did kind of splurge on a little bit. Should I have spent less money and just rented a tux instead of buying a suit? Or how do you feel about that?
I didn't feel any type of way about that. I felt as though long-term it made sense, especially because you are a pastor and you would have to wear suits or whatever to preach. So it made sense. It made sense to just get a solid suit and so that you can wear it for other things that you had to wear a suit for. So
got you.
Yeah. When you explained it to me, it made sense. So I really didn't feel any type of way in terms of splurging for that.
And I wore the heck out of that suit.
You sure did. Do you still have it?
I still have it. I don't wear it anymore just because it's I wore it a lot.
When was the last time you wore it? I don't feel
Oh man, I wore that suit for a good 10 years. I probably haven't worn that suit in about 5 years or so. It's been a long time.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen it, but no.
It's in my closet. No, it's in my closet. It's in the closet, and I'm gonna have it for the rest of my life, God willing, just to kind of preserve those memories. But I have not worn that suit in a very long time.
How much did you pay for it?
Probably I got it from J. Crew. I remember that, and I probably paid like a good $500 or $600 for it.
Okay,
something like that. Yeah, and I got a lot of wears out of it, so I was glad about that. So that was one thing that we did splurge on. Now, some things that we would have changed for our wedding, I think like for the reception, and I'll let you start this section off first. Do you wish we had like changed looking back on it, would you have changed the reception venue? And I think we spent, I want to say around $5,000 or so for the reception venue. Looking back on it now, 15 years later, would you have made the same choice?
I think you have more of an opinion on that. I feel as though for the amount of people that we were like inviting and just for that price, because back in the day, like wedding venues, you were hard pressed to find a spot where you weren't paying per head. So this was like a spot where you didn't have to pay per head. You can bring your own catering. And that's another thing too that was factored in. And where you
instead of having to use their caterer.
Yeah, right? Having to use their caterer, which the per head part comes in. So considering all of those things, I felt as though it was like a good venue. Yeah. And that, we didn't pay as much as we would have had to pay if it was like a venue where you had to pay per head. Because we had about like 300 people at our wedding.
And we'll come back to that in just a second.
That was, so.
We had a lot of people.
Yeah, you didn't have to pay per head. So that whenever you don't have to pay per head, like you will save in cost.
I completely agree. Yeah. I think considering the circumstances that the other circumstances, like total big picture, I do think the cost for the venue wasn't bad at all, right? But I do think generally we kind of did what others had done, just kind of followed, true. Which isn't always bad. I think that can be important, especially if that decision makes sense. But I do think we could have creatively searched for a less expensive reception venue, which would have taken time. I was working hard all summer to try to pay for this thing, and I think you were taking maybe some classes or so, or you were working also. Yeah, it was like a very busy summer. So all things considered, I think we did the best that we could with what we had. Right. But looking back on it, I wish we had creatively found a less expensive reception venue. I think we could have found something probably at half the cost for the venue itself. But neither here nor there, right? Okay. Photography. That's something that we didn't spend a lot of money on. How do you feel? Do you think that we did okay with that, or do you think we should have spent a bit more to try to preserve those memories even better than what they're already preserved at?
I feel as though we should have spent a bit more to make sure that, because it was a lot with the whole photography piece, because we didn't get our pictures till like it was like a year or so after the wedding, and the video wasn't all that we wanted it to be. So yeah, most definitely I feel as though we should have spent more on that so that it was done more professionally.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think if there was one place where I wish we splurged a bit more, maybe cut some costs somewhere else and put more of the financial emphasis to this, I think preserving memories, at like the older I get, the more I'm into preserving memories. So even for our children, I wish we had taken more pictures of them when they were like babies and growing up and whatnot. I just love that kind of stuff. So I think that like photography in general was a place that we should have just put more money towards. All right, so here's a bonus question, and then we're going to give the audience a list of places that they themselves can save for their own wedding. But I do want to ask you what you think about asking wedding guests to give towards a fund for a house down payment in lieu of gifts, like, you know, buying a trash can or coasters or something like that. Do you think that that's something that we should have done, or should have asked people to give towards? And then what do you just think about that, doing that in general as a married couple?
I'm trying to think at that time whether or not I would have felt weird asking about that. But nowadays, things are different. People do things in unconventional ways. And I don't think it would be looked at as tacky as it would have looked back then. Yeah. So definitely now, go ahead. Like, weddings is just too much money being spent that could be better spent somewhere else. But yeah, I don't know how I would have felt back then. I feel as though I would have felt some type of way. Like, that's sort of a little tacky.
Because I think honestly, we could have been trailblazers in that, but someone had to blaze the trail.
I know, but I do think I would have felt, a little like, that's asking a bit too much. Yeah. But that's in lieu of all gifts, so you don't have a registry. Correct. You don't have, okay.
Yeah. How do you feel about people doing that now, though?
I love it. Like, go ahead. Smart decision. Because then you get gifts. It's like multiple gifts. Yeah. And then people don't even go off the registry.
Yeah, that's true.
They buy whatever they want to buy. And at the end of the day, what really helped us, or what really benefited us, was like money. People who gave cash. That's what we were very, very happy about, cash.
Yeah. I mean, we were grateful for all the gifts, but it was like, oh yes,
the cash money. That was great. Yeah. That was what really,
I definitely agree. And even thinking back to it, 15 years ago, I don't think we would have been ready. Like, let's say in the event that we had gotten like a lot of money for a major down payment for a house, I'm not even quite sure, just mindset wise, we would have been ready for a major responsibility like a house at that time. It would have been great, would have been a huge blessing. But I just feel like in my heart that we may have squandered that opportunity because we just didn't have a great financial mindset back then. So
to buy a house, or to have enough money to buy a house?
No,
you think we would have wasted the money on something else?
Maybe. I don't know yet. I don't feel like we had a great financial mindset back then.
But we weren't like crooks. We had ethics. Like, if we said we were going to use it for a house, I don't think we would have used it for something else.
Okay. I agree. Not intentionally, I don't think, but life be happening.
True.
Life happens. True. I definitely think we would have had the ideal. We would have set out to want to buy a house, and that be like, in our heart of hearts, yes, we really want to do that. But I think life probably would have happened. And anyways, neither here nor there. Right. We didn't get money for a down payment, but I just generally think I don't think we would have been ready for that kind of responsibility at that point in time. But that's just me. All right. So here are several ways that people can save money on their wedding. And first and foremost, I think the number one thing that costs people money is the reception, both the venue and the food, the catering. So the number one way that you could probably save money on your wedding is to choose another day of the week or during the off-peak season. All right. So most people get married on the weekends, and I would dare say vast majority of people, or the highest percentage of people, probably get married on a Saturday. Probably number two would be a Sunday. Get married on another day of the week. Once you get off that off-peak day, whether it be a Friday, Thursday, like any other day, you're going to be saving money because it's not going to cost as much. Or get married during an off-peak season. And I think I read that the number one month for weddings nowadays is October. And I was surprised to read that. I thought like most people are getting married during the summer, like June, July or something.
I feel as though people do more creative things for weddings nowadays too. And also in terms of like fall weddings and stuff like that, they do more of those. It was back in the day, the summer was the time for weddings, but nowadays it's more so like fall-ish.
Yeah. Well, so anything off season. And I dare say, and I'm probably going way too far when I say this, the justice of the peace is still a reasonable option. Am I tripping
Not
with
for
that?
Your first wedding, babe.
First wedding. How many weddings are people planning on having?
Well, realistically, people have they do have multiple weddings, but if you're just be creative in finding cheaper ways, but it's still beautiful.
Got you.
But justice of the peace, no, baby.
Okay. All right. Well, you heard it from Rachelle's mouth. Don't go to the justice of the peace, whatever. All right. So that's number one. A second way that people can save money on their wedding is to use a non-traditional venue. Is that okay?
That's what I just said.
Oh, okay.
I literally just said that.
Okay.
I said, be creative.
All right. Got you.
That's
all right.
What I meant.
All right. By creative, meaning that you don't necessarily have to rent a hall or, the greatest wedding spot that some celebrity rented as well that costs $20-something thousand. You can rent something that is like you can rent a park, you can rent some historic site, or you can even go to the beach and have a wedding there.
Barn weddings, like at a barn.
Yeah.
Really cute.
Yeah, those are expensive nowadays too, though.
Really?
Yeah, they're expensive. Yes. But I do think it's something that you can use like as an all-in-one. So a lot of people who use the barns don't have like the traditional church wedding, but they'll have the wedding ceremony as well as the reception there as well. So that's an idea, but get creative. Use a non-traditional venue. That's number two. The third way you could save money on a wedding is to cut the guest list. Now, I'm just going to pause right here because, again, we had how many people at our wedding?
It was like 300.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
But we know a lot of people.
We do.
We grew up with a lot of people.
We do.
We have very close-knit, kind of family-oriented environment. You have a huge family. But you also have just a lot of people who like help to raise you. A lot of aunties, uncles, fake aunties, fake uncles, a lot of fake cousins. It's just like a lot. When we say cut the guest list, would you have been all right with cutting the 300 down to like what number would you have been okay with? Where we're splitting the guest list like 50-50. So if out of 300 you had 150, how many guests would you have been okay with for yourself and total for both of us?
I would say reasonably like 100 each.
Oh, I thought you were saying 100 total. So
what?
So
just my immediate family, 100 is like you wilding right now. But I would have been comfortable with cutting it to 100.
Okay.
Just think about it, Troy.
No, I've thought about it many times. For 15 years, I've thought about it. Trust me. I get it. I understand the dynamic. I know.
And
how
I'm talking about immediate, like just like between my siblings and their husbands and like my mom's siblings.
I get it. I know how many people are in your family.
100 is like what?
I get it.
Yeah.
That means though that a lot of the extra people who were invited to the wedding, and I have nothing against, people who aren't family or who aren't close to us. I love everyone, right? But just because you love everyone doesn't mean that everyone has to be at your wedding.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. 100.
Right. But you still, what I'm trying to say is you would have offended somebody.
Yeah, true.
Would you have been okay offending people because they got cut from the guest list?
It depends on the person.
Rachelle, with the 100 that you have on your, like hypothetically,
right?
Someone would have gotten the axe.
Mm-hmm.
The people who got the axe, would you have been okay with them being upset? Because they would have been upset.
Right.
Would you have been okay with them being upset with them?
Now, yes. Back then, no. I was only 22. Like,
okay.
My mom would have been on me. My sisters, like, what do you do? Like,
yeah.
Now I don't care. Like, but back then I felt as though I would have been like, oh man.
So to the 22-year-old who's planning on getting married, what do you say to them? Are you telling them care about what people think about you and how they'll react when the guest list is cut? Or are you telling them, hey, it'll be okay. You will be forgiven. Everyone's not going to hate you. And you'll be better off in the long run. You won't regret this in the long run 15 years later. What are you telling that person?
Most likely the latter.
Okay.
But as much as possible, if you know you have a close-knit family and you have, a large family and a lot of people that have invested in you, I would say go for the cheapest possible venue where you can get the most amount of people.
Okay. All right.
If
fair
that
enough.
makes sense.
Fair enough. Okay. So that's number 3, and we have 5 of them. The next one is to buy items during the off season. So don't just choose another day or choose the wedding date during an off-peak time of the year, but actually buy the items, purchase the items well in advance, like during the off season, so that it's.
Good question. What items would you?
I'm talking
buy?
about dress.
Okay.
Right. So of course, like fresh flowers, you're not going to be able to do that. Right. But if you're, I'm not sure who buys chairs for a wedding. That I'm sure that's a thing, but most people aren't doing that. But even if it's like tablecloths or something that's wedding worthy, but I would say especially the dress or that kind of thing. Buy it from last year. Is that like okay? Do we have to have this year's style? Is this year's style so different from last year that you're not going to look good?
I don't care about that.
Oh, okay.
Stuff, so.
But some people do. So that I think that's probably mainly what I'm addressing, buying something that's not this year's style or buy during the off season. Okay. So the last one here as to how you can save on your wedding is to have just one invitation. And I know that many people send out several kind of invitation things, such as the save the date and pre-invitation, then the real invitation, and then the post-invitation. Like, I don't know what's going on nowadays. But most people do send out several things. Honestly.
Invitation.
No, and I am speaking like out the other side of my body. But I feel like there's always something new that people are creating to make things more expensive. So
the marriage market and children, they capitalize on that. They just make up a whole bunch of things.
There's always something new for a baby that people think they need in order to make their baby live or survive their toddler year. I'm like, dude, what in the world is this?
Yeah.
We never had that.
Yeah.
All right. But like, I feel like one of those things, especially another thing before I even get there is that what is this whole thing about gender reveal parties? Like, what the heck?
Babe, let's
stay on that. And we'll probably create a new video for that.
Yes.
But just send out one invitation, especially if you're getting the invitations professionally done. Those invitations do cost a good amount of money, and they are per invitation per head. Right. And so to reduce that possibly by half, send out one thing and then direct your guests to your wedding website instead of sending multiple save the dates and or invitations. The last one, if you don't mind me saying, and this is less about the wedding and more about the marriage, but this is a piece of advice that will save you not just money, but will save you a lot of heartache. It will save your relationship. Do this to save on your marriage, and that's to get premarital counseling. Folks, please.
Yes.
Please. Because here's the reality, Rachelle. I don't even, and you know this about me, right? And this might be a shock to people, especially having pastored for 13 years. I've done so many weddings during my career, right? I don't really like going to weddings.
Speak for yourself. I live for weddings. I love weddings. Me and my sisters.
You do.
We love weddings.
You do. I don't really like them for a number of reasons, but I think a major reason is that, and this is going to sound like so bad, right? But please just hear me out. In the back of my mind, I know that the odds are that they're probably going to get a divorce anyways.
Babe.
I know. That sounds bad. And that's not an indictment on the couples, the weddings that I've attended. That's not if you're watching this, that is not an indictment on you at all. I'm just talking about the odds. This is where society is. True. People prepare a lot more for their wedding day than they do for their marriage. True. That's just a reality. And what I'm asking you to do, if you're planning on getting married, God bless you. Congratulations. Please don't hear this cynical side of me, right? Just completely dismiss it. What I'm trying to share with you is that you need to prepare a lot more for the lifetime of marriage than you do for the one day of the wedding.
Agreed.
So whatever you need to do to prepare, like financially, put a lot of money. I would much rather you put a lot more money towards premarital counseling than for the wedding day. If you said, Troy, I spent $5,000 on premarital counseling, and I couldn't afford to pay for a $10,000 wedding. Look, I'm telling you, you did the right thing. Spend a lot more time, energy, and money towards preparing for the marriage than you do for the wedding. So that's our last piece of advice. Please find someone to do premarital counseling. As a pastor, someone who has pastored for 13 years, I'm not pastoring any longer at this point, but I have oftentimes referred a lot of people to counselors who are more professional than I, people who have had more training than I have had, so that they can be as well prepared for marriage as they possibly can. So if pastoral counseling is good, do that, but make sure you get a professional, if you need that professional help, to do premarital counseling with you and for you so that you can have a good rest of your life and not just a good day for the wedding. Rachelle, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
This has been wonderful, and it's always great reflecting on the 15 years of marriage with you. And as much as I can save money with you for the next 15 years, I would love to do that. But thank you for being married to me.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you too. We'll catch y'all next time.